The year the sun disappeared, you open your eyes, and the world feels off. The sun hangs in the sky, but its light is faint, more like the glow of the moon than the blazing orb you've known all your life. The air feels cooler, the shadows longer, and each day seems wrapped in a permanent dusk. It's the year 536 AD, though you wouldn't know it. You don't mark time by numbers. You mark it by seasons, by harvests, by the strength of the sun. And now that rhythm is broken. At first, it's confusing. You expect the morning light to return, but the sun never truly rises. It simply appears as a pale disk veiled behind a strange haze. You look up at the sky and wonder if something has gone wrong with the heavens themselves. The older villagers whisper of omens, of gods angered, of signs that the end is near. Some recall stories passed down by ancestors, tales of dark skies and long winters. But those were just stories, right? Days turn into weeks, and the gloom doesn't lift. Birds sing less often, crops don't grow the way they should, leaves yellow too soon. There's a deepening sense of unease. No one really knows why it's happening, only that it is happening everywhere. You hear rumors from passing traders that the darkness reaches far beyond your land, that the sun has vanished across kingdoms, and people everywhere are afraid. Imagine living without science to explain this. No satellites, no meteorologists, no global news, just you, your village, and a sky that refuses to shine. What would you think? What would you feel? In an age already teetering between war, famine, and uncertainty, the dimming of the sun feels like the final unraveling of the world. In the Eastern Roman Empire, what you might call Byzantium, imperial scribes take note of the dim sun. In Syria, historians like Procopius will later write about a year where the sun gave forth its light without brightness. In Ireland, the annals record a failure of bread. In China, royal court astronomers struggle to understand the faint light and failing crops. Even in the Americas, signs will show up in tree rings, revealing a sudden drop in temperature, as if the earth itself took a deep, cold breath. But right now, you don't know any of that. You just know that it's colder than it should be, that your animals are restless, that your neighbors' faces are pale and worried, and that the darkness is not going away. You light more fires, you burn more wood than usual, you listen to the silence that creeps in after sunset, or what passes for sunset now, and you wonder how long this strange twilight will last. You pray, even if you never used to. You look to the stars, but even they are fewer, obscured by a hazy veil that drapes the sky like a funeral shroud. And then you begin to count, not the days, but the things you've lost: sunlight, warmth, laughter, certainty, and what you've gained: fear, hunger, doubt. The year 536 is only beginning, and you daren't yet know that this will be called, centuries later, the worst year to be alive. But in your bones, in your breath, in your fading hope, you already feel it. The ash that blocked the sky, you wake to a silence that no longer surprises you. The birds are quiet, the wind is still, the sun, once more, is pale and cold. But something new has begun to settle over the land. A fine dust, soft like ash, that coats leaves, roofs, and your skin. It falls slowly, almost invisibly, yet each morning it seems heavier, a gray whisper from the sky. You don't know it yet, but far to the north, something enormous has erupted. A volcano, likely in Iceland, has blown its top. It's not just lava and rock. It's a sky-shattering explosion, one that sent a mushroom of ash high into the atmosphere. A column so tall, it reached the stratosphere, spreading a veil of particles across the entire planet. This invisible shroud is what dims your sun. It's what chills your bones. It's why crops won't grow. But in your world, the word volcano doesn't exist. There's no concept of geology, no understanding of global winds. You only know what you see and what you feel. And now you feel cold, unnaturally cold. The ash changes everything. When it mixes with rain, it turns to muddy streaks across your home and skin. When you breathe, there's a faint grit in the air. The old people say the earth is sick, that the sky is wounded, that this is not weather, but punishment. And in a way, they're right. The ash doesn't just block the sun, it poisons the seasons. Spring fails to arrive. Summer is a ghost. You plant seeds, but they rot in the ground. Those that sprout grow weak and thin, bearing little fruit. You watch entire fields turn brown before they should be green. The famine begins slowly. First, it's less bread at the table, then none. Then you're boiling roots, chewing bark, grinding grass into a bitter paste. You trade what little you have, tools, clothing, even heirlooms, just to get a few grains of barley. But no one has enough. Hunger spreads like fog, silent, thick, everywhere. Across the world, others suffer the same. In Ireland, monasteries struggle to feed the poor. In the Andes, ancient cities begin to decline. In Scandinavia, entire villages are abandoned. In China, droughts and summer frosts ruin the harvests. The emperor's officials report plummeting grain supplies. The Mongolian steppes turn harsh and unforgiving. From Europe to Asia, from Africa to the Americas, the earth seems to turn against its children. But still, no one knows why. Your priest says it is the end of days, that the sins of mankind have brought down divine wrath. He leads prayers in the church every evening, voices rising toward a dim sky that offers no answers. Others believe in monsters, or demons, or dark sorcery. Some blame foreigners, a few blame their leaders. Everyone wants a reason, but no one has one. You notice something else now. Animals dying, cattle too thin to stand, chickens refusing to lay eggs. Even the wild deer seem fewer, as if they too have lost their place in this strange, graying world. And still, the ash falls. You begin to forget what blue skies looked like. You dream of warmth, like it was something from another life. You start marking your days, not by meals, but by moments of hunger. The ache in your stomach becomes as familiar as your own heartbeat. Some give up, some wander away, never to return. Others grow sharper, hungrier, meaner. A neighbor you once shared stories with now guards his food like a dragon. Another accuses your family of hoarding. Fear sows seeds of suspicion. And just like the fields, your sense of community begins to wither. You think about moving, heading south, maybe, but to where? Every village you hear of is the same. Pale sun, dead crops, empty bowls. You look at the children, their faces thin, their eyes wide. They ask when the light will come back. You don't know what to say. You want to lie. You want to believe it will all return to normal. But deep down, something tells you this is not a passing season. This is something else, something deeper. You don't have the words, but you feel the truth. The world has changed. A world without seasons. You watch the calendar, or what's left of it. Scratched markings on the wall, worn lines in the dirt, trying to measure time. But the seasons no longer follow their order. The snow came late, then stayed too long. The rains were weak, the winds bitter. Spring never warmed. Summer, if you could call it that, brought no heat, no growth. Time feels broken. The elders say they've never seen a year like this. The children ask what summer is supposed to feel like. Even the animals are confused, mating out of season, migrating in strange patterns, or not at all. The world no longer breathes in its rhythm. The plants are the first to suffer. Fruit trees bloom too early, then freeze. Wheat withers under cold gray light. Grapevines refuse to ripen. Nothing tastes right when there is anything to taste at all. The land feels exhausted, not from use, but from abandonment. Even weeds seem hesitant to grow. Markets are nearly empty. What food exists is shriveled, hoarded, or spoiled. You hear of riots in distant towns, bread theft, granaries looted. In some places, people are accused of witchcraft just for having food when others do not. Desperation doesn't always bring out the worst in people, but often it does. Religious leaders offer conflicting explanations. Some say it's a test, others say it's a punishment. A few whisper it's a warning. You pray anyway, not because you're certain it will help, but because it's the only thing you can still do. Prayer becomes habit, like breathing or hunger. Writers from across the ancient world begin to take notice. In Constantinople, Byzantine historians note the absence of the sun. The sun gave forth its light without brightness. One writes, like the moon, during the whole year. You've never seen Constantinople, but you imagine its great domes darkened by the same dull skies above your village. In China, imperial scribes record strange frosts in the middle of summer, crops dying in the fields. In the Americas, the great cities of Teotihuacan and others begin to decline. Perhaps not solely because of the climate, but weakened by it all the same. No empire is strong enough to stand against a sun that won't shine. You realize that you've started measuring your life not by harvests or celebrations, but by what's missing. You remember colors that no longer exist, deep greens, golds, the clear blue of a warm afternoon sky. You think about how quiet everything has become. Even the birdsong seems hesitant now. Some people try to explain it in their own ways. A woman in your village swears the earth has been cursed by a fallen angel. Another says it's the breath of a sleeping giant. A wandering scholar you met once spoke of distant mountains that spew fire. A strange story you barely understood. But now think of often. In your bones, you know this isn't just a bad year. This is something else, something deeper, a turning point. But no one can say in which direction you are turning, into ruin or rebirth. The children, once playful, are quieter now. You catch them staring at the sky, trying to guess if the sun will return, if the world will warm again. You wish you could promise them it would. But promises feel hollow in a world where seasons no longer keep theirs. The cold seeps into everything. Walls, beds, your thoughts, even your memories feel frostbitten. You start to wonder, will we remember how the world used to be? Or will this become the only way we know how to live? One day you step outside and realize that you haven't seen a shadow in weeks. There's no sunlight strong enough to cast one. It's like the world itself is becoming a ghost. The year drags on, so slowly. You don't know if it's May or November. You don't care. Time has become shapeless, and all you can do is survive it. Ash on the wind, you wake to a strange scent in the air. Bitter, dry, metallic. The kind of smell that sticks to your clothes and clings inside your nostrils. You rub your eyes and look outside. The sky isn't just gray today. It's brownish, a dull, choking color that dims the daylight even more than before. Then, like soft rain, ash begins to fall. It isn't snow. You know snow? This is too dark, too coarse. You reach out and catch a flake between your fingers. It smears like dust, but feels gritty. The elders murmur among themselves. Someone says it's the end of days. Someone else swears they've seen this once, many years ago, when a mountain to the north rumbled in the earth and choked the sky. You don't live near a volcano, but now you understand what the traveler meant. Long ago, you heard tales of great mountains that could tear themselves apart, spitting fire and stone. At the time, it sounded like myth. Now, you wonder if one of those mountains erupted and threw the world into shadow. What you're feeling, though, isn't just ash on your skin. It's something deeper. It's in your throat, in your lungs. The air feels heavier. People begin coughing more often, especially the old and the very young. There's no relief indoors. The ash finds every crack, every breeze, across the world. Though you do not know it, these same particles drift from the skies, across Europe, the Middle East, Asia, and beyond. Ice cores, drilled centuries later, will trap them deep below Greenland and Antarctica. Tiny black layers preserved in ancient ice like scars on the planet's memory. To us, they whisper a silent truth. Something massive exploded in 535 or 536. Maybe in Iceland, maybe further, maybe even more than one eruption. Some historians call it the mystery eruption. The exact volcano is still debated, but its power is not. It was titanic, strong enough to throw millions of tons of sulfur and ash into the stratosphere. That veil of particles dimmed the sun across the entire globe. You do not know the science, but you feel its weight every day. Crops fail, not just from the cold, but from the poisoned sunlight. Fields lie dusty and gray. Livestock grow thin. Water tastes faintly sour. You see trees begin to shed their leaves too early or grow twisted and stunted. Still, people try to carry on. Rituals multiply. Some communities light fires to drive away the sky's curse. Others stage processions, walking barefoot through streets, chanting ancient hymns. You do not judge them. Everyone is trying to understand, to reclaim a sense of control. There's another, darker rumor spreading, that the ash is more than just rock or smoke, that it carries disease, that it's seeding the earth with sickness. You don't want to believe it. And yet, more people are falling ill. Strange fevers, swollen glands, fatigue that never lifts. You find yourself coughing one night, deep and dry. You tell yourself it's nothing, just dust, just cold air, just nerves. But you start watching everyone's eyes more carefully for signs of fear, of fever, of what might come next. The ash doesn't fall every day, but it lingers. It coats rooftops, floats in still water, outlines the footprints of children. It makes the world feel unreal, like a painting slowly rubbed away. The few colors left in the world are now muted, sickly versions of themselves. You begin to dream in shades of gray. No longer do you dream of summer fields or blue rivers. You dream of emptiness, of doors that open into smoke, of walking through a forest where the trees whisper warnings in a language you can't understand. And through it all, you wonder, how long can the earth hold its breath. The disappearing harvest, you step outside at dawn, hoping that something has changed, that the sun will finally shine through fully, burn away the gloom, and bring the warmth your village desperately needs. You walk past the fields, the ones you and your neighbors have been tending for generations. Some blame the ash, others blame divine punishment, the stars, the rulers, or perhaps your own sins. Now, there's only a little left, and it's being guarded, counted, stretched. You see desperation creeping into your community. Trade slows, bartering becomes tense. Arguments break out in public. Trust begins to rot. Children ask why their stomachs ache. Parents say nothing. Some try to distract them with songs or stories. Others give them water to fill the void. Roads have grown dangerous, not from war or beasts, but from hunger. In cities, you're told, things are worse. Bread prices have doubled, tripled. In Constantinople, riots have broken out. People line up at bakeries before dawn, hoping for a crust. Some rulers try to help. In China, Emperor Wu of the Liang dynasty orders aid for the poor. In Byzantium, Emperor Justinian releases grain from state reserves. But no one can stop the weather. No one can summon the sun. Even emperors cannot command the sky. In Ireland, chronicles say the crops fail completely. In Scotland and England, rainfall drowns fields. In India, the monsoon comes late, and then comes with fury, washing away what little grew. Across Europe and Asia, patterns that once guided farming are now broken beyond recognition. And it's not just the plants. Animals begin to die. Cattle grow weak, their milk fading. Pigs grow to lean. Chickens stop laying eggs. You remember the joyful noise of a barn full of animals. Now it's silent, and with that silence, your diet shrinks further. You begin to notice changes in the people around you. Hollowed cheeks, short tempers, slow movements. Once full-bellied children no longer run or shout. They sleep more. Some don't wake up. Funerals become frequent. Graves are dug shallower, faster. Still, some try to resist despair. A neighbor experiments with wild herbs, trying to make soup from leaves and bark. Another family starts raising insects, anything that breeds fast and needs little. You help build a greenhouse, hoping glass and warmth might give your vegetables a fighting chance. But innovation is slow, and hunger is fast. The year turns again. Another cold spring arrives, and this one feels even crueler. You've run out of the things you once thought would last forever. You no longer dream of feasts, you just dream of bread. Then, one day, a rumor spreads. Someone in the next village has eaten their dog. Another family has disappeared. Some say they left, heading south. Others whisper darker explanations. You try not to think about it. By now, you have learned to ration hunger. You eat less. You think less. Even emotions become expensive. Grief is exhausting. Joy is rare. And yet, life clings on. It always does. Some seeds do sprout. Some children survive. One morning, you spot a flower blooming through the ash-covered soil. It's small, defiant, fragile, but it's enough to make you stop and stare. Enough to make you believe that something still wants to live. You kneel down and whisper thanks to the earth, to the sky, to whatever force might be listening. Because in a world where food has become memory, even the smallest sign of life is a reason to hope. Whispers of blame as hunger deepens and light continues to fade. so does the patience of your community. People begin to search for someone or something to blame, because the idea that this is simply happening without reason, without cause, is almost unbearable. It starts quietly, hushed murmurs in doorways, sideways glances in the market square. You hear people whispering about the old widow who lives on the edge of the village. She talks to birds. Her garden is oddly green, even in this cursed cold. Some say she's been praying to the wrong gods. Then a child falls ill. The next morning, a stone is thrown through her window. Fear, when it festers long enough, becomes anger, and anger, when it cannot strike at the sky, finds softer targets. Your village is not alone. Across the known world, panic breeds superstition. In Italy, people chant to ward off demons they believe are dimming the sun. In Syria, processions march barefoot for days, carrying relics to drive away the punishment they believe has befallen them. In Constantinople, fire and incense are burned to purify the air, the ash, the fear. In Scandinavia, the Norse begin to suspect that the gods have abandoned them. Some say Ragnarok has begun, the final battle, the death of the sun, the undoing of all things. And in some Christian communities, the darkness is seen as a sign. The end times are near. A reckoning. You walk by the local shrine one evening. There are more candles than usual. People kneel, heads low, muttering prayers with an urgency that chills you. They are not asking for favor. They are begging for mercy. Leaders are not immune either. Some rulers are praised for trying to help their people, for cutting taxes or sharing grain. Others are cursed, accused of offending the heavens or hiding food. One Byzantine general is stoned to death by an angry mob simply for failing to deliver a promised shipment of grain. You begin to notice that law itself is fading. Once, people feared stealing from temples or neighbors. Now, desperation has shifted those lines. A loaf of bread disappears from a windowsill, a sack of barley from the granary. At first, people ask questions. Later, they stop asking. In this world of hunger and shadow, trust is hard to come by. And still, the cold lingers. Some begin to leave. Small groups slipping away before dawn, hoping to find food elsewhere. They head toward larger cities or rumored farmlands that haven't failed. Few return. The ones who do bring only stories of disease, of tighter controls, of even worse starvation. A traveler arrives in your village one night. He's gaunt, filthy, and half-conscious. But he carries a story that electrifies everyone. He claims to have seen the sea boiling. He says the sky turned red and the ocean hissed like a beast. And for days after, fish washed ashore, belly-upped, as if something had poisoned the water. No one knows if it's true. No one can prove it false. You can't even remember the last time you saw the sea. That night, a heated debate breaks out in the village hall. Some think the gods are punishing humanity for its arrogance. Others believe the world is simply dying, that it's a natural cycle or the turning of an age. A few, mostly the young, believe this is a test, one that will lead to something new. But all agree on one thing. The world is not as it was. You, too, begin to wonder what lies behind the sun's absence. What could cast such a long, global shadow, and why now? It's a question you can't answer, but you feel it press behind your eyes, heavy and constant. Even in sleep, it follows you. In your dreams, the sky is a mouth, swallowing light. The world is an hourglass tipped on its side, and time, like warmth, is leaking out. A world without seasons. You wake again, wrapped in every layer you own, your breath misting in the air, like ghost smoke. It is midsummer, or at least, it should be, but the trees are bare. The soil, usually warm by now, is cold and damp to the touch. No bees hum, no birds sing, and the sky is the same color it's been for months, gray and dull, like ash painted across the heavens. It is as if the earth has forgotten how to turn. There are no seasons anymore, only varying shades of cold. Spring never truly came. Summer is a myth. You remember what summer used to feel like, the heat pressing against your skin, the scent of wildflowers, the sun high and golden. That memory is more painful than comforting now, because you know it might never come back. Farmers around you begin to talk of failing cycles. Seeds sprout late, if at all, and die young from lack of warmth. Fruits rot on the branch. Even the animals are confused. Hens lay fewer eggs. Goats produce bitter, thin milk. Cows stare off into the mist, refusing to graze on frozen grass. Crops that used to feed hundreds now barely feed 10. And it's not just your village. Messengers, travelers, and merchants, what few are left, tell of similar stories far and wide. In Ireland, monks scribble down notes in the margins of illuminated manuscripts. A failure of bread this year. In China, court records detail famines, failed harvests, and desperate calls for grain. In Peru, the Mocha people abandon their ceremonial centers, unable to farm the dry, failed land. Everyone is looking upward, to the clouds that don't break, the sun that doesn't shine. There are no satellites, no weather models, no global alerts. Still, you feel it in your bones. The world is locked in some kind of stasis. And with this unnatural pause comes a terrible consequence. The silence of time. When the seasons vanish, you lose more than just harvests. You lose rhythm, structure, the gentle marking of time that told you when to plant, when to rest, when to celebrate. Festivals are forgotten. Holy days pass unmarked. Without spring blossoms, there are no weddings. Without summer warmth, there are no gatherings. The year becomes a featureless plain, and you, a shadow, walking across it. Elders in your village look to the stars for answers. But even the constellations seem muted now, barely visible behind the haze. A few claim to see strange patterns, red glows at night, odd movements, a shimmer in the darkness. But no one can agree on what it means. You begin to notice how slowly people walk now, how softly they speak. It's as though everything has slowed down, not just the plants and the animals, but humans too. Even laughter, when it comes, feels out of place, like a bird that shouldn't be singing. You hear rumors from distant places, floods in Mesopotamia, snows in June, locust swarms in North Africa. A strange, dry fog has been seen in Constantinople. It smells of sulfur and turns the sky the color of brass. Ships become lost at sea, unable to navigate under the sunless sky. Some never return. At night, the elders whisper a word you hadn't heard before: volcano. They don't know what it is, not really. Only that there are places where fire comes from the earth, and that sometimes, when the fire grows angry, the sky turns black. Is that what's happened? A great fire, somewhere, big enough to block the sun. You don't know, but something about it feels right. One day, a traveler from far north arrives, half-starved and wrapped in furs. He speaks of a mountain that exploded, of a sky filled with ash, thick as night. He claims animals fled for weeks before it happened, that the sun was swallowed in a single afternoon. He doesn't know the name, but years later, scientists will suspect it. Mount Ilopango, in what is now El Salvador, or maybe the Rinjani volcano in Indonesia, or something else, vast, violent, and lost to time. But for now, there is only the silence of understanding too little. You step outside one morning and see the first frost of the year. It's only August. Your breath catches. There's no time left, no season to wait for. Only the slow approach of another winter in a world that no longer remembers spring. And in the stillness, you begin to wonder, what happens when time itself breaks? Ashes in the air, you wake before the sun, not because of any sound, but because of the stillness. The air is too quiet, too heavy, like a held breath stretched thin across the world. You step outside, rubbing the sleep from your eyes, and notice it again, a faint haze clinging to everything. It's been there for months now, but this morning it feels thicker, closer. You reach out and brush the railing near your door. Your fingers come away gray, dust or no ash. You hold your breath, heart pounding. You've seen this before. Every surface in the village is dusted with it. Rooftops, trees, even the backs of the sheep. And when the wind stirs, it lifts like smoke and settles again in soft layers, as if the world is trying to bury itself. It has no scent, not like smoke from a fire, just the bitter, cold scent of stone and silence. A child in the village calls it sky dirt. You call it something else. Warning, the ash is everywhere now. In your food, in your water. It creeps into your lungs, leaving behind a cough that never seems to go away. You see it in the eyes of your neighbors, the fatigue, the strange weight in their chests. No one talks about it much, but everyone feels it. You remember what the traveler said, the one who spoke of the mountain, the fire that reached the heavens, the clouds that turned day into night. That fire must have sent this ash into the sky, must have filled the air and blanketed the earth. But how far did it go? Could a single mountain really change the whole world? Yes, it could, and it did. Much later, people with instruments and satellites will study this phenomenon. They'll call it a volcanic winter. They'll dig deep into ice cores in Greenland and Antarctica and find layers of sulfur and ash dating back to this very year, 536 AD. They'll find evidence that something massive exploded, darkening the skies and cooling the earth by several degrees for nearly 2 years. But you don't have that knowledge. You only have what you see. The sun is still dim. Even at noon, it glows weakly, like a dying candle through stained glass. It casts no shadows. Birds fly strangely, disoriented. Many have vanished entirely. Some people say they've flown south and kept going. Others say the birds know something we don't, that the world is ending. You try not to believe that, but it's hard, because the ash keeps falling. Soft, silent, relentless. And worse, it's not just the ash. Strange weather patterns sweep across the land. One day it's freezing cold. The next, it rains mud. The rivers swell, then dry up. Lightning strikes without storms. And when you walk across the fields, you see things that shouldn't be there. Dead insects by the thousands. Fish floating in shallow creeks. Animals migrating out of season. Nature is broken, confused. One night, as you sit by a dying fire, an elder speaks softly. "This is the breath of the gods," she says. "They've exhaled in anger. and now the sky carries their sorrow. It's poetic, but in some strange way, you believe her. Because the ash isn't just a nuisance, it's a reminder that something bigger than you has happened, that the earth itself has stirred, and you are small. You begin to notice other signs, too. Metal rusts faster, food spoils sooner. Even your skin feels different, dry, cracked, as if the air is slowly pulling the life out of you. Children grow sick more often. Old people stop waking up. And when they're buried, the ash falls again, covering the graves in hours, hiding the markers, as if even memory is being erased. The world is becoming ghostly, pale and worn. Some people leave. They pack what they can and vanish into the fog, hoping to find better lands elsewhere. But many return, hungry, thinner, eyes haunted. There's nothing out there, they say, just more gray. Your village stops building things. What's the point? No one knows what season it is, what day it is, even what year it might be now. Calendars feel useless. Bells no longer ring. Priests speak softly, if at all, and the ash falls. Still, life crawls forward. You adjust. You adapt. You cover the well with cloth. You cook indoors now to avoid the dust. You teach your children to wipe their mouths before eating. You place bowls outside to catch clean rain. You don't know when the ash will stop, or if it ever will. One morning you wake and see a faint shimmer in the sky. Not blue, not gold, but light, weak and pale, but there, the sun, perhaps, a glimpse of it. You dare to hope. Maybe the ash is thinning. Maybe the fire has spent itself. Maybe, just maybe, the world is ready to breathe again. But hope is fragile, and you've learned not to hold your breath. Whispers and warnings, the year continues to grind forward, as if time itself is weighed down by the ash. You've stopped measuring days in the usual way. There's no more seasonal rhythm, just stretches of cold, damp silence, interrupted by brief moments of strange weather or the distant sound of coughing. One evening a merchant arrives in your village. He's thin and pale, wrapped in layers that don't seem warm enough. He doesn't speak right away. He just sits near the fire and stares into it, as though trying to find something in the flames. Eventually, when offered bread and water, he nods and begins to talk, softly, like someone telling secrets to the dark. He's traveled far, across mountains, through forests, past cities that are now hollow and echoing. He tells you the same story you've heard whispers of for months now. The world is sick. Not just your village, not just your region, but everywhere. There are no crops, he says, not in the south, not in the east. Everywhere, the fields are empty. You listen. Others gather around, too, silent, hungry for news. But the news is bad. In Constantinople, he continues, there are riots in the streets, people fighting over scraps. Even the emperor cannot feed them all. They say he weeps in his palace. He tells of northern lands, of Norsemen who think Ragnarok has come, of monks in Ireland writing by candlelight about endless darkness, of Chinese scrolls recording snow in summer and famine spreading like fire. You barely understand their names, but hearing of their pain, identical to yours, does something strange to you. It comforts you, not because others suffer too, but because it means your suffering has meaning. It's part of something bigger. You are not alone in this silence. The merchant sleeps in your barn that night. In the morning, he's gone, quietly vanished into the mist like the ash itself. But his words remain, and they start to change people. Some begin praying more fervently. Others turn to superstition, marking doors with strange symbols, hanging herbs from windows, even sacrificing animals. You watch a woman pour wine into the soil, whispering to it. She says she's feeding the earth, hoping it will feed her in return. But nothing grows. A man begins shouting in the village square, claiming the darkness is punishment for forgotten gods. He has followers within days. Even your own dreams change. You find yourself walking through endless ash fields, following voices you can't place. Sometimes they speak Latin, sometimes Greek, sometimes a language you don't even know. You don't understand the words, but the tone is always the same. Warning. And then you wake, throat dry, heart racing, to the same gray world. You hear of other travelers, other messages. In far-off places, chroniclers are writing the history of this strange year. In Constantinople, Procopius, a historian, writes that the sun gave forth its light without brightness, and the shadows disappeared. In the Chinese court records, there are entries describing yellow fog and failed harvests. And in Syriac chronicles, monks scribbled down a terrifying phrase. The sun became dark, and its darkness lasted for 18 months. You don't know these names, but someday people will piece together these scattered writings. They'll connect the dots, from the Byzantine Empire to the Tang dynasty, from Irish annals to South American ice layers, and realize that 536 wasn't just a bad year. It was a global rupture, a collapse of the known order. The merchants' stories, the whispers from distant lands, the warnings in the dreams, they all blend together now, like ink spilled across parchment. You can't separate fact from fear anymore. You begin to notice the shift in how people speak, the way they lower their voices when talking about the sun, the way they hesitate before planting anything, the way they look at children with a kind of quiet sorrow, as if unsure they'll grow old in this world. You feel it too. A part of you wants to hope, to believe that the sun will return, that the rains will come properly, that your village will bloom again. But another part, the deeper, quieter part, just wants to survive. You ration your food more carefully now. You patch your clothes, not to look good, but to make them last another season. Whatever that means anymore. You mark time not by festivals or harvests, but by the number of people who've gone silent. And still, the ash falls. One day, you find yourself standing at the edge of the woods, listening. You don't know what for. Birds, laughter, thunder. Instead, you hear wind, but it sounds like whispers, like the world itself is remembering a time before the ash, before the cold, before this endless waiting. And in that moment, standing in the stillness, you realize something. You are part of history now, not the kind in books or scrolls. The world has cracked, and you are walking across its fracture lines. You don't know what's ahead, but you keep walking anyway. A sky that forgets to shine, the days blur together now, not in color or brightness, but in the same dull gray that has become your world's default. You wake, you breathe, you try to find purpose in tasks that used to mean something, but without seasons, without sun, time itself feels like it has dissolved. Children born in the last 2 years have never seen a blue sky. They've never chased their shadow, never squinted in the sun or felt its warmth on their backs. You watch one of them, a boy barely old enough to speak, hold out his hands to the sky, palms up, confused. He's never been taught what sunlight feels like. All he knows is cold light and ash fog. And you realize, for them, this isn't a disaster. It's just life. You begin to ask yourself questions, quietly, privately, that you never dared ask before. What if this never ends? What if this is the new sky? You're not alone in this quiet fear. People have stopped referring to when things return to normal. Now they say if hope is becoming more like superstition, a fragile, flickering candle that's hard to keep lit in all this wind. But even so, something unexpected begins to emerge. Adaptation. You see it in small ways. First, someone lines their walls with clay and straw for extra insulation. Another starts digging a root cellar deeper, trying to preserve food in the constant chill. A group of villagers begin tracking which mosses are safe to eat and which ones aren't. Someone manages to build a greenhouse from old glass and salvaged timber, a tiny structure, barely large enough for a few plants, but it gives off the warm scent of green when opened. It's not survival by strength anymore. It's survival by cleverness and patience and willingness to change. You remember an old saying, "The tree that bends in the wind does not break." Now you understand what that means. One day, an old man arrives from a monastery far to the north. He carries scrolls and a strange-looking calendar that's been adjusted for the new sun, as he calls it. He speaks of omens and prophecies, but also of cycles, of past darknesses in history that eventually gave way to light. He believes this, truly. You can see it in his eyes. And though you're not sure you believe in omens, you find comfort in the idea that maybe, just maybe, others before you have endured something like this. He speaks of the Roman famine of 400 AD, of plagues that swept through ancient Egypt and left behind only dust, of volcanoes that blackened the skies in Indonesia long before anyone knew the name Krakatau. We always think our suffering is unique, he says, until we see its echoes in the past. His words settle into your bones. You begin to think differently about time, not as something forward-moving, but as something cyclical, like a wheel, grinding through patterns of feast and famine, light and dark. You wonder how many other wheels have turned like this before. How many people, in how many forgotten centuries, have looked at the same pale sky and felt the same ache in their chest? You are part of something enormous, not just geographically, but historically. You are a witness. The darkness continues. Yes, but so do you. You grow used to lighting oil lamps at midday. You learn to tell the time by how the mist shifts between the trees, or by how long it takes the goats to return from grazing. You start writing again, not because anything has changed, but because the act of writing itself feels like resistance. You record what you see, the frost creeping into homes, even in summer, the people learning to dry herbs by fire instead of sun, the way birds have gone quiet. You write not for today, but for someone far ahead, someone who might look back and wonder what it felt like to live through 536. You write so they'll know. It felt strange and hard and endless, but it also felt deeply human. Because even in all this, people still tell stories. They still fall in love. They still sing lullabies to children and carve small symbols into stones. They still dream, not always, hopefully, but honestly. One night, as you sit beneath a skeletal tree, you look up into the murk. The clouds have parted slightly, just for a moment, and there, faint, trembling, you see a star, only one. It flickers like a dying ember, but it's there. You blink to make sure it's real. You're not sure if it's Venus or something else. You don't care. It's not the return of light, but it's a memory of it. And for the first time in weeks, you sleep without dreams. The year is 537, and yet it feels like 536 never truly ended. In truth, no one knows what season it is. You plant when you can, harvest what little survives, and accept that summer might never return in your lifetime. You've learned that it's not just food that people need to survive, it's rhythm. Spring meant hope, summer meant work and joy. Autumn was preparation, winter was hardship, but also rest. Now there's only gray. Gray skies, gray earth, gray routines. And you see what this loss of rhythm does to people. The elderly grow quieter. The young grow restless. Farmers stare at the land and seem lost in thought for hours. Some towns abandon their festivals entirely. What is there to celebrate when even the harvest moon doesn't shine? But in the middle of this emptiness, something starts to emerge. Small but defiant. People begin to invent their own seasons. A woman in a distant village marks a tree every time a flower blooms, even if it's just one. In another town, someone names the warmest week of the year the false summer, and they gather, wrapped in cloaks, to tell stories around a fire, pretending they are sunbathing. They laugh at the absurdity, but laughter itself feels like sunlight. You smile when you hear this, and in the darkness, these small acts of make-believe become survival tools. You start doing it too. You light a candle on the first day you hear birdsong again. No matter how faint or fleeting, you keep a tally on your wall for every day without snow. Your village holds a gathering. Nothing formal, just people sharing tea and warmth. Someone plays a lute, another sings off-key, but joyful. You listen, surprised at how loud a single voice can feel in this world of silence. He brings with him a journal from Constantinople, with accounts of what the Eastern Romans are facing. Crops failing, riots in marketplaces, entire city blocks emptied out as people flee in search of the old climate that no longer exists. But he also brings news of hope, small victories scattered across a shattered world. You hold on to these stories, not just because they're useful, but because they remind you that you are not alone. Then something remarkable happens. A child is born. They name her Lucia Light. It's a quiet name, filled with longing. And when you hold her, tiny and wrinkled, you realize something. Life doesn't wait for conditions to improve. It insists on itself. Lucia cries, and the sound is sharp and real and stubborn. She will grow up not knowing the old world, the one with bright skies and endless summers, but she will grow up all the same. You tell her stories as she sleeps, not about kings and warriors, but about light, about the way sun once hit leaves and turned them golden, about the feeling of warmth on your skin. You describe it so vividly that you almost convince yourself it's still out there, somewhere beyond the gray. You wonder what she believes. Will she think sunlight is a myth, or will she be the one to see it return? No one knows when, or even if, the skies will truly clear, but the ash has begun to fall less heavily now. Maybe not the sky, but something inside you. You no longer wait passively for the world to fix itself. You engage with it, broken and beautiful as it is. You mend roofs, teach children, bury the dead with care. You no longer speak of the end times, but of endurance. And for the first time in a long while, you feel like time has started moving again. Not because the seasons have returned, but because you have. A new silence in the forests. You step into the forest one morning, following a familiar path that once led to berries, mushrooms, and kindling. The trees creak softly in the chill air, their bare branches wrapped in a stubborn haze. But today, you hear something strange, or rather, you don't. There are no birds, not a single chirp, not a rustle of wings. The silence is not peaceful. It's hollow. You pause, letting the stillness soak in. Once, this place buzzed with life. Jays called from high limbs. Squirrels darted across the floor. Even in winter, you could expect some sound. A crow's caw, the flap of something startled. But now, it feels like the forest itself is holding its breath. You bend low and brush your fingers over a fallen leaf. It crumbles too easily, like everything has aged too fast. The ground is colder than usual, the soil still hard though spring should be arriving. Something in your gut says this isn't just late winter, it's something else. Back in the village, others have noticed too. The hunting parties return empty-handed more often. Traps sit untouched. People whisper that animals have fled or vanished, and those few still found. Deer, rabbits, are thinner, less wild, like they've forgotten what a full belly feels like. Your uncle speaks one night about a great quiet he once heard stories of, a time before memory, when the land fell asleep and would not wake for a generation. You wonder if this is what that meant. But even in silence, the forest teaches. You begin to listen more closely, not for sounds, but signs. The way moss grows thicker in one direction. Maybe that side catches rare warmth. The way certain roots stay soft underfoot. Maybe water still flows there. You stop walking with noise, and instead start tracing the invisible map the land still holds. You find mushrooms hidden beneath frost, a root that smells sharp and bitter but keeps your stomach settled, a cluster of bark that burns longer in the hearth. Each is a treasure now, not just for survival, but for hope, because the forest, though quiet, isn't dead, just slowed, just waiting. Like you. You start carving symbols into the bark of one tall pine, your own calendar, a sun for every warm day, a tear for every snowfall, a tiny flower for any sign of life, a green shoot, a bug crawling across bark, a feather found. The tree becomes your diary, your altar, a place to return to. One evening, as you light a fire nearby, a fox appears. It stands just beyond the circle of warmth, lean and sharpened. It doesn't move, doesn't run, just watches. Then, after a moment, it vanishes into the mist, and your heart swells. Not because it stayed, but because it was there. Something is still watching this world with you, something wild. You return to the village that night with fresh eyes. You tell the children stories of the forest fox, how it guards the path between this world and the next, how it speaks in riddles and only appears to those who listen well. They ask if it's real. You smile and say, as real as anything else in this strange year, and they nod. They understand that answer better than you expected. In the days that follow, others begin to visit your tree. They mark it to one carves a star for every dream they remember. Another scratches runes of protection. Someone ties a string of dried flowers across two branches, a garland in honor of spring. Even if spring hasn't come, the tree becomes a shrine to the waiting, a testament to the silence that speaks. And slowly, the forest becomes something else in your mind. Not a place that has failed, but a place that endures in its own rhythm. Not asleep, not dead, just breathing slowly. You find comfort in that. Not everything must rush to return. Some things return only when they're ready, and in that patience, you learn something powerful. You can outwait the dark. You don't need to defeat it. Just live through it, one small act at a time. Your world has grown quiet, yes, but silence is not the end of the story. Sometimes it's the beginning of something deeper. Whispers of distant fires, the year drags on like footsteps in deep mud. By now, you've measured time by the firewood you've burned, the days without sun, and the stories you've told more than once just to fill the silence. But tonight, there's news. A rider. He arrives near dusk, covered in dust and trembling from the cold. His horse looks thinner than yours. He doesn't speak at first, just holds out a bundle, cloth wrapped around something hard. You and the others gather close. He's from another region, far to the south, near lands you only know from travelers' tales, and the bundle, charcoal and glass, melted together. You stare. It looks like fire, caught mid-roar and frozen. Your village elder touches it, then withdraws, as if it burns. Volcano, he whispers. There's that word again. You've heard it more often lately, passed between wandering monks and lost soldiers. Some say a mountain exploded in a place called Ilopango. Others speak of fire eating the sky in lands beyond Rome. And now here's proof, solid in your hand. Suddenly, all the strange signs make a little more sense. The darkened sky, the sun that glows but does not warm, the crops that die even before they live, the smell, that faint sour scent in the wind some nights. It's not just your world that's changed, it's the world. You gather around the rider as he speaks. His words are halting but urgent. He tells of fields turned to ash, of rivers drying and then flooding, of places where snow fell in summer, not soft flakes, but gray and bitter, stinging the eyes. He tells of people leaving everything behind, walking with no destination, just away from where they were. Some whisper that the gods have left. Some say it's a curse. Others believe this is the long night before something new is born. That last idea lingers in your mind. A long night before the dawn. But how long? You sit with the rider after the others drift off. By the firelight, he shows you a small cloth, hand-dyed with spirals and suns. My sister made it, he says. She said, if the stars disappear, I could carry my own. You trace the pattern with your thumb. It's beautiful. And suddenly, something cracks open in you. Not fear, not sorrow, but awe. You are alive in a time of legend. This year, this cursed, cold, silent year, it will be remembered. You are living history, not just surviving it. And that gives your suffering meaning. You are a thread in a much larger story. You lean closer and ask the rider, will you go back? He shakes his head. No back left to go to. You nod, then stay. You say, you'll need stories for the road ahead. That night, you share all the ones you know. You speak of the fox in the forest, of the calendar tree, of the day the sun was just a ring of fire behind clouds. You tell them not because they are great tales, but because they are yours, real, rooted, and carried in memory. And in return, he gives you a song, soft, sad, and strangely warm. You hum it in the days that follow. Others learn it too. And suddenly, without deciding, the village begins to sing again. Not loud, not joyful, but present, alive. You hang the spiral cloth near your doorway, a sign that even in ash, color still matters. The rider stays for 3 moons, then moves on, carrying your stories and leaving some of his behind, and in his place, others begin to arrive. The world is moving, and your village is no longer at its edge. You are part of the path now, a rest stop, a place where silence meets voice and memory finds breath. One traveler brings dried herbs, bitter but healing. Another offers a piece of glass that catches the light like a captured flame. One shows you how to braid cord that doesn't snap in snow. They don't stay, but each adds something, and in exchange, they take your stories with them. You begin to realize this is how the world endures, not in stone or steel, but in memory, in whispers shared around fire, in cloth passed from hand to hand, in songs hummed into the dark. Even if the sun never shines like before, even if the old gods remain silent, you are not, and that is enough. When the sky brightens, you wake earlier than usual, not because of hunger or cold or fear, but because something has changed. The room is faintly lit, not firelight, not moonlight. You rise slowly, heart thudding with curiosity. You step outside, and there it is. The sky is not clear, but it's lighter. The gray is thinner, more like smoke than stone. Behind it, you glimpse a shimmer, a suggestion of blue. It doesn't last long. By midday, the haze thickens again, but it was real. The sun showed its face. You can hardly believe it. Others saw it too. A group of children ran barefoot across the clearing, laughing so loud it made the dogs bark. An old woman knelt in the dirt and whispered thanks to no one in particular. It wasn't spring, not yet, but something is shifting. The birds return first, small ones, with calls you barely remember. Then insects, then shoots of stubborn green pushing up through cracked earth like hope through grief. Still, you stay cautious. You've learned how quickly the world can change. But deep down, you allow yourself the smallest seed of belief. Maybe, just maybe, the worst has passed. The elders meet again. They speak with a different tone now. Less dread, more planning. What can be planted? What animals are left? Who can go trade with the river towns? And perhaps most important, what must be remembered? Because that's what keeps coming up. The need to preserve, not just seeds, or tools, or recipes, but memories. You realize it yourself when a young boy asks, "What was it like before?" and you pause. So you tell him about how summer smelled like warm dust and wet leaves, how light came through the trees in golden strands, how the river sang when it thawed. You speak slowly so he can remember it too. That night, someone suggests painting again. The dyes are weak, the brushes old, stories, images, symbols, a collective memory written not in books, but on skin and fabric and stone. The calendar tree blooms again, not as much as before, but enough. The lines are rough, but they say, "We were here, we endured, we remembered." One night you sit alone at the edge of the clearing. The wind is gentle, the air cold but clean. You close your eyes and try to hear what's beneath the silence. Not despair, not grief, but something deeper, a presence, as if the earth itself is breathing again. Your mind drifts to the stories you've heard of distant kingdoms, strange stars, voices from the sea. All these threads, connected now by a single year of darkness. What will people call it? The great cold, the year of ash. Or maybe something more poetic, the silent year, the time of gray, the turning. You wonder what story they'll tell about you. Not just your village, but you. You, who watched the sun vanish and still lit a fire. You, who sang when your voice cracked. You, who told stories not to entertain, but to survive. You, who remembered. Because in the end, memory is defiance, and kindness is resistance, and laughter, even quiet, even brief, is rebellion against the dark. So you sit there, at the edge of the world, in a year that almost broke it, and you whisper something soft, just for the wind to hear. It's not a prayer, it's not even a hope, it's a promise, that no matter what comes next, you will carry the story forward. The legacy we inherited, the worst of it, past, the ash, the silence, the hunger, all of it folded into memory, now part of your breath, your bones. But as peace returns, so does the question, what now? You stand in the same valley where you once wept for warmth, where the trees looked like ghosts, where no birds sang, and now that same land is green again. The trees whisper instead of groan. The birds not only sing, they fight over nesting spots like nothing ever happened. But you remember. You remember too much to pretend it never occurred. So, you begin to shape your life around remembering. You tell the children, you tell them everything, not to frighten, but to prepare. Not in stories of doom, but of choices. When to share, when to endure, when to hope, anyway. Because in 536 AD, the world didn't burn or explode or vanish. It simply grew quiet, and the quiet was where people broke or changed. You built rituals from the experience. Every year, on the date the sun first returned, you gather in the open field, not to celebrate, not exactly, but to observe. You sit in silence as the sun rises, each face warmed by the same light once stolen from you. Someone always weeps. You never ask why. You know, and the knowledge spreads, passed by word, song, journey. Other villages take the custom. A map of memories begins to form, not drawn on parchment, but in the hearts of survivors. And you notice something strange. People are kinder now, not everywhere, not always, but in the wake of loss, something softer remains. Neighbors help rebuild, even when their own roofs are broken. Strangers ask before taking water. Farmers trade seeds without counting every grain. Maybe because death was so close. Maybe because darkness taught you what light really means. The children born after don't understand, not fully, but they listen. Their eyes widen when you speak of the year the sun vanished. Some ask if it'll ever happen again. You always answer carefully, it might, but you'll be ready. They nod, solemn, and then run off to play. Sometimes you envy them. Other times, you're proud you've given them that innocence back. You walk the old paths again. Some of the places are gone, swallowed by time, by famine, by fire. Others have changed names or been taken over by forest. You carve symbols in certain trees, just small ones, reminders to anyone passing through. We were here, we endured, keep walking. And you think often of the world beyond yours, of Byzantium, where emperors struggled to hold power while their people starved, of Ireland, where monks wrote poetry by candlelight, surrounded by ice, of China, where the dust refused to lift and warlords fought over emptiness, of Africa, where kingdoms shrunk but survived, holding stories the world forgot. You realize something unshakable. Even in darkness, life looked for a way forward. You were never truly alone. It's strange, now, to hear laughter without flinching, to eat until full without guilt, to sleep without dreaming of fire. You're older now. The lines on your face were carved by more than time, by years of endurance, but you don't resent them. Each one is a page, a chapter, a proof, and then, one day, you meet a traveler, young, curious. He tells you about the great cities rising again, of books being written, of roads being rebuilt. He asks you, the old villager with the worn eyes, if the stories of the dark year are true. You look at him, you smile, and you hand him your journal, the one you started in secret, the one written by firelight, the one called The Year We Didn't See the Sun. He holds it like treasure. He says he'll share it everywhere, and you believe him, because now your memory isn't just in your head. It's in ink. It's in pages. It's in the mouths of strangers. And one day, when darkness visits again, because it always does, in some form, someone will remember. They'll know what to do. Because of you. Because you stayed. Because you told the truth. And because you believed, even in the worst year, that the world was not ending. It was waiting. Now, the story closes. You're back in your own bed. Safe, quiet, still. The shadows on your wall are just shadows. The silence is peaceful, not ominous. The world outside spins gently, full of cities, trees, voices, and light. But somewhere deep in history, 536 AD still lingers. It hums beneath the ground. It whispers through old ruins. It echoes in the breath of every ancestor who endured without knowing what came next. They didn't have answers. They had courage. That courage is now yours. You carry it, like a flame passed in cupped hands. A reminder that the worst days don't erase you, they shape you. And that even in the most hopeless moments, something ancient inside us still whispers, hold on. Tonight, let those whispers cradle you. Let your breath slow. Let your mind soften. You've walked through ash and silence. You've seen what it means to rebuild. You've felt the coldest year, and now, in this warm, safe space, you can rest. Tomorrow will come, and if ever it doesn't, you'll still carry the story. You are part of it now. Sleep well. You've earned it. Sweet dreams.